Turn on my microphone. Call to order the City of Sherwood Planning Commission meeting for February 26, 2019. Roll call. Here. 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 Thank you very much. The first item on our agenda is the consent agenda, which consists of the January 22nd and February 12th meeting minutes.
I moved to adopt, but I understand you guys have some Scrivener issues.
I just have a few Scrivener edits that I can give to Colleen.
Okay. So I moved we approve it then.
Second.
All right. Do you have any corrections?
I did have one correction, and I can read it out loud, but I can also email the text.
Is it material? Does it change the context of the minutes?
Not drastically.
It does, then we need to hear it then.
So, yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
So on page 4 of the January 22nd minutes, fifth paragraph down, under Commissioner Kai agreed that enforcement of the owner occupancy requirement would be difficult, but the language will provide a tool to maintain order if problems arise. I wanted to add after that, Commissioner Kai further expressed that retaining owner occupancy meant that ADU owners would also hopefully be mindful of potential impacts to the neighborhood of additional units, whereas a landlord might not and may only be concerned about maximizing property revenue versus neighborhood impacts. I know that's extensive, but I couldn't figure out a way how to condense that further. That can potentially be done otherwise, but
Let's just move to approve the minutes with the addition of that was just
Comments?
specified. Is that okay?
Yeah. Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda with the addition of the language.
Well, I just have more of a question. That's not, I guess, more for Colleen, because generally the minutes are supposed to reflect what actually happened, and so my question is really, did you actually express that?
Yes.
Or did you want to express that and maybe didn't?
no, I did express that, and I was really only wanting to make sure that it's included in there for council's, when they review to come back, because I felt that was an important part of the retaining the owner occupancy portion as well.
And then I just want to make sure that, Colleen, that you don't have any concerns that I mean, if that's what you believe was said and the rest of the commission agrees that that's what they believe you said, then it's probably fine. Okay.
Yeah, that was what he said was the gist of the rest of the.
I would say the gist of what we were trying to get out, maybe more articulate now than it was when we were trying to.
But yes, that was the gist of the conversation and what Commissioner Kai's statements were at the time of the meeting. So yes. All right. So we have a motion and a second to accept the minutes as amended with Scrivener errors to be provided to Colleen after the meeting. All right. Any further comments? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right. The next item on our agenda is to elect the chair and vice chair. And we've been, our vice chair is not here this evening. He is ill. And normally it puts us in an awkward situation because it's an illness that he can't be here for, and we can't talk to him and ask him what is going, what his intentions are for continuing as vice chair. But prior to his illness, he had expressed to Erica in an email that he would not be continuing beyond the termination of this assignment on the Planning Commission, which ends March 31st. So I'm looking to the commission to, the general gist of where we're going is he is not planning on re-upping or standing for the position again, and we can choose to elect him as vice chair to the completion of his term, or with this information
Can we just continue the way we're doing it right now until the next meeting, so we get them both here? And would that be easier for everybody?
If we have
Does
a
that
vote,
cause any consternation with anybody?
we've noticed it, and we're formally continuing it.
And we're formally continuing it. Let's just continue to our next meeting. Hopefully, the other two can be here.
And Commissioner Flores will have an opportunity
Right.
to speak. So I would.
Is that okay? That's just my
Is that
idea.
a motion?
Sure, why not?
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we continue the election of chair and vice chair and continue as it stands until the next meeting. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
2 for 2.
All right, council liaison announcements.
All right.
You are no longer Commissioner Scott, Counselor
I am now
Scott.
Counselor
Welcome-
Scott, and-
Welcome to the other side of the table.
And I'm now the new liaison to Planning Commission. Councilor Garland, who's in the audience, has taken a different liaison or multiple liaison assignments in lieu of this one, so we've shuffled things up as we do every year. I'll be brief because I totally forgot I had to do this and didn't prepare. We at our city council meeting last week, we did cover a couple of items. We did pass in our second reading a transient lodging tax, so otherwise known as a hotel tax, which will go into effect, which is in effect, will be within a month or so. Certainly we have a couple of Airbnb type establishments in town already that would be subject to the tax, and then of course once the hotel opens, then it would be subject to that tax as well. It is a 3% tax. So we also get money from the county. It's all in the details. So we did pass that. We also forgot. Wow, I'm so unprepared. We also passed a resolution, an ordinance. Sorry, something this commission should be very familiar with. We passed the ADU dwelling units updates we needed to do to comply with state law. As you know, we spent first reading. So second reading will be at the next city council meeting. Thank you, Erica. And we'll pass those updates along. But I think we talked briefly about some of the changes that the commission made at your last that you passed on to the council. And I didn't sense there was any general disagreement with any of that. So expect with that pass at our next second reading at our next meeting. And then we also passed a supplemental budget for this fiscal year. And
We're getting raises?
Nope. Yes.
Regarding the ADU, did council make any changes?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope, we passed as is. We had some discussion about some of the points about the square footage and some of the other items, but I think we generally agreed with the commission's recommendations once it was all kind of talked out. So.
Thank you.
So just a clarification, the first reading, they discussed changes, but they will formally adopt it at the next one, but they didn't discuss changes.
And then it will go into effect 60 days or 30 days?
30 days.
30 days from there. Okay.
As I mentioned, we passed a supplemental budget of spending covering things like the skate park came in, the concrete prices are way up, so the skate park came in a little bit over budget, so we had some extra money for that. Feasibility study on pedestrian bridge overpass and a couple other things that were in the supplemental budget.
Is that for the high school, the pedestrian bridge?
It's near the high school, so that's, I think, the instigating factor, but it wouldn't only be for the high school, obviously.
All right.
And this is just for a feasibility study to determine if it's even possible and how it would be paid for and other things. We also, on the budget side, the budget committee meetings have kicked off, and so that whole process for the next fiscal year is getting started, and those are open to the public, and definitely would encourage and recommend anyone who's interested in how the city spends all of our money to get involved and pay attention. That's all I got.
All right, wonderful. Thank you very much. Now we have staff announcements, and this is, Erica, the first time I've had staff announcements formally printed, so it was a big one to read, too. So thank you. I appreciate that because there was a lot of information very much needed and appreciated.
Great,
so thank
great.
you. So it is now your show.
I'll continue that from now on.
when there's 6 pages of announcements written is great.
Good. So my first announcement tonight, I just want to make a point that our hearts are with Commissioner Flores' family at this time. He has been ill, and we do have a card that I hope all of you have signed. And we also have a card basket upstairs for any community members to drop off any cards or well wishes for him. My second announcement has to do with the comprehensive plan update. City Council did approve the contract with 3J last Tuesday to move forward with the planning process for this update. What was that?
That was an announcement.
Well, then I could ask, was there any angst in all that? Nope. Good. We did our job then, right?
So in your packet tonight, I did provide the scope of work for that project. There are just a couple minor tweaks to that scope. And one of the things that we have discussed is having a project advisory team for this project that would be made up of 2 city councilors and 2 planning commissioners. And the intent of this project advisory team is really to provide staff and the consulting team like feedback, especially through our public engagement process, so we can bounce ideas off this team to make sure that we're going in the right direction. As you can see, the scope of work is for 24 months. It's going to be a 2-year project. We talked about condensing it, but then at the same time, we recognize the fact we want to get out into the community and talk to as many people as we possibly can, because it's the roadmap for Sherwood's future.
Yeah, open for questions on the document itself. Are we going to be using this as a roadmap going forward? Are there other? So a couple things were questions about on A5, that first section. It talks about all the places that it's going to go, and I don't know if it. And then now you throw in the project advisory team. I'm getting a sense that maybe we haven't finalized when ideas are generated through the online process, the CAC, the TAC, where staff and the consultants are driving us, and when this project advisory team are going to put out ideas. And then I know we're going to have talking points that we take to the public, and then when the public meetings and the open houses occur, and it is a couple of 3 sentences that aren't flushed out yet. Is that a good way?
Actually, we have a great slide, a great visual that actually really depicts what you're talking about, and I can
email it to us.
That. Yeah, and then we can have kind of a discussion offline if you have any questions in regards to timing. Mm-hmm. But really, the scope of work is kind of broad. I think things will change as we start this project. Things will shift a little, but hopefully this is the direction that we're going in.
And the six themes are in an order 3.1 through 3.6. Is that the order that we're going to tackle those? It's on bottom of A3 to A4.
Yes. So the first topic are our core blocks that we are going to be reviewing. The first one is thriving in a diversified economy. And that's because one of our main council goals is economic development, so we pushed that up to the top. Mm-hmm. The second core theme is strong community culture and heritage. The third is strategic and collaborative governance. The fourth is attractive and attainable housing. The fifth is coordinated and connected infrastructure. And the sixth is healthy and valued ecosystems.
So we're going to do them in that order, and as we go through the process, we'll create white papers for each one of those and go through the process. And I think the slide will explain from white paper to adoption ready draft that would then circle back to put all 6 pieces in a complete document, and we'll revisit the economy and the housing one more time at the end of the 24-month process before we go to adoption, correct?
That is correct.
I will say that in our discussions among council, there was a great interest in throughout the process as we worked through it, that both the Planning Commission and the City Council have a more active and role in the development of the plans and the communications to the public and the outreach strategies, so that it's a very interactive process. So we're not just receiving the information after the fact and having it be. I think the visioning process, I think we recognize as a council, we thought was kind of more consultant and staff led, and I think we're highly interested in the next phase being more led by council, planning commission, and the CAC in combinations, and potentially the new advisory committee as well.
And so the project advisory team will be formulated. Is it an official process through the city council and they will adopt the advisory team, or is it not an official committee type appointment?
It's not an official committee. And so at our next meeting, our next official meeting, which is on March 26th, we'll have a little conversation about who might want to participate in that project advisory team or planning commission.
Okay.
And Erica, I was just going to suggest, and it sounds like that meeting would be a good opportunity to basically give the Planning Commission a similar presentation as we did at the council work session to kind of explain that, and then just reiterating our commitment that this is, we've got to have a scope of work, obviously, but it's not set in stone, and we need to, and that's part of what that project advisory team is going to kind of help us. If we need to shift a little bit, then we'll shift, and we'll make sure that this is the best darn comprehensive plan update on the face of the earth.
Fabulous. But in the meantime, after the meeting, you can email us probably the PowerPoint and the slide that you were mentioning. Yes.
I wanted to ask, I know it's come up a couple times before, if we want to ensure that code updates happen in coordination with the comprehensive plan update, what would be the best way to make sure that happens, so that we do have...
You got to wait until the comprehensive plan's adopted, so then you have the template for making those changes, because if you start ad hocing the changes along the way, one area may spill over into a second area, and we may be making changes 2 or 3 times. So it's just better, in my experience, to wait until the comprehensive plan's adopted, but making notes about where you think the changes need to occur.
Right, and maybe also prioritizing what needs to, what chapters you want to look at first.
Right.
Okay.
So one of the concerns, Mark, that we had come across during this process was some of the comprehensive plan updates and the visioning process has specific things in the housing needs and in what makes Sherwood feel like Sherwood, and a lot of it is driven by residential designs, which, because we don't have guidelines in place, the ADU code is an example that it will harm us if we don't get our residential design guidelines in place, because the ADU code from state requires that the ADUs not be more
Or less than.
right. And so,
Well, that's not really a comprehensive plan issue so much as that's just we passed this new law, and now we need to make sure it flows throughout the whole code, right? So that's
right,
that's not amending as a result of the comprehensive plan.
But the
That's just
design guidelines within the residential areas, if they don't follow closely behind our comprehensive plan update, we could have a gap between what we're visioning and what we're able to apply in applications as they come through. And
I don't know if design standards is really part of the comprehensive plan per se, other than community involvement in what we want the town to look like.
we want to,
But
yes.
it could very well be that a policy that comes out of the comprehensive plan process is to develop residential design standards that
Right.
do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And your point is noted, and I think we understand. We need to make sure that we don't just do a plan and then not do anything else to implement it. And we will, as we are getting into the comprehensive plan and getting towards the end of it, we will be also beginning to think about the implementation phase of how we do that. And there might be opportunities along the way. It's not like we're going to do nothing else for 2 years. But we'll have to react to things as they come up as well.
One of the things we could pass that would be a stopgap is that to any attached or detached ADU, they have to meet the designs of their then existing home. So if the then existing home has lap siding, then the ADU has to have lap siding. It can't be T111, for example. But you could do a stopgap like that until we get the whole thing in play. So you don't have 2 different architectural standards on the same lot.
Is there nothing that exists in the ADU that refers to that currently? Because I feel like I remember that being...
I know it does.
It does.
we kind of have,
So we provided some flexibility in the proposed ADU amendments that council had their first reading on. So either a homeowner, a property owner can design an ADU to reflect what the current house looks like
Right.
and using the materials that are on the existing house, or they can choose to do an upgraded design
For the whole
standard
thing.
For the whole thing, that looks at additional trim along windows.
That was the stopgap we put into place until we get to the comprehensive plan to do
Right.
everything.
Right, yeah, and I didn't mean to get us in the weeds, but
Okay.
residential design standards on multifamily mixed use can.
No, all right.
Can't. So get back to the question is, how does the commission send a message to the council that we need to make sure that through the process or at the completion that we have prioritization for
I think-
funding?
So I think when we get towards the end of the comprehensive plan, we'll set up a work program for implementation, and we'll prioritize it. And if the design standards for residential development are, high up on that list of things to get done, that will go to council as.
Well, I think she's also suggesting that council needs to be aware in their budgetary process to put some
Right.
money aside so that we can afford to do this.
Right, because we have design standards in some parts of our community, but not in all areas, and it is a piecemeal at best. When we did the town center planning as required by Metro, design standards got implemented, but not right across the street, and so now you have this.
Hodgepodge?
Yes,
So
yes.
I would just say, the comprehensive plan is a 2-year process, and we budget on a 1-year time period. So I think it's duly noted. I think that, council knows, staff certainly knows, the commission is not going to, it will continue to be a conversation. I think it's important to continue to bring it up and to continue to remind everybody throughout every budget process that while it's a 2-year process, there will still be implementation phases, and make sure that they're not surprised when we submit a budget, that involves implementation as well. But it's not something that I think we have to worry about
Okay.
right now.
All right. All right, you have
So-
3 more things. So thank you.
Moving on to our 2019 fence code update. We do have a project page online for people to review. Planning staff has been working with our code compliance officer on some proposed recommended text amendments. We hope to come back to you on March 12th as a work session. We originally had a hearing that night, but that hearing has been pushed to March 26th. So we'll just have a work session on March 12th to review the fence code update to see if we are on the right track. The next update is the Brookman Road concept plan. We did receive a $100,000 grant from the Planning and Community Development Grants from Metro. We are working on developing a scope of work for this grant opportunity, which will allow us to kind of refine and refresh the Brookman concept plan that was adopted in 2007 to really look at the Brookman Road realignment and what that will look like. We hope to get that on council's agenda here within the next month. So we'll be moving forward with that project later this spring and early summer.
Okay, thank you.
This will be like the 4th time we've paid consultants to look at Brookman Road, just so you know.
This would be the 3rd time that I'm aware of. The first time was many, many years ago before it was brought
Metro
in.
paid us $60,000 to do it.
Yeah, it was
long
way
time
before
ago.
my time, and it was a sort of preliminary concept plan before it was brought into the urban growth boundary.
Right.
In 2007, Metro paid for us to do a concept plan, and this time Metro is paying. So we have actually not.
I'm just saying, it seems like in Oregon, we've gotten into the rut of planning and not doing. It'd be just nice to do the plan.
Well, it
And then actually
requires
allow it.
annexation and development that has not happened, and so time has
Right.
changed, and so we need to relook.
I
at it.
understand why, I'm just.
Just making a comment.
All right.
Well, it just,
Next.
it gets tiring to keep looking at the same piece of property for 14 years.
All right.
All right.
Next planning commission meeting is now a
Yes,
work
so
session.
Is now a work session on March 12th.
I just put it in my calendar. So are we having it at our regular time or?
6:30 work for everyone for a work session?
Sure.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Yes.
So on March 26th, it's spring break week. We just want to make sure that if we do have a
I'll be gone.
You'll be gone?
Party
Yeah.
in Cancun. Wasn't one.
My wife has me going and seeing the grandkids in Utah, so it's not like a fun. I know it's fun to see the grandkids, but not in Utah. At March, there's no snow and there's no sun, so.
I'm going to be here.
Okay.
I'll be here.
Okay, great. Great. Looks like we will have a
spring
forum.
break.
My birthday's the next day.
Nice. Are you going to be here? Or you...
I am. I apparently have to pick up someone from the airport at.
Uber.
Yeah. We'll kind of work that out.
We'll work that out. I had to drop my husband off at the airport at 5 tonight, so that was
Yes, Uber.
Uber. All right, so we're good. All right. Any other announcements? Sorry, Erica. Okay, now we're moving on to community comments. Community comments are limited to those items not already on the agenda. And if you wish to speak tonight regarding community comments or on any other agenda item that's scheduled, we ask that you complete one of the blue cards in the back and turn it into one of the staff members so that we can be prepared for calling your name. I don't see anybody racing up for community comments, so I'm going to move on to new business. And the new business is our public hearing, and it says Landmarks Advisory Board, and the Planning Commission is the Landmarks Advisory Board, so we will be acting as
Yeah, two
as the Planning
resumes.
Commission. So we'll double our pay from 0 to 2 times 0 tonight. So we are going to move into our public hearing process. I have a script to read. The public hearing on LA 18-05 Pine Street Mixed Use Development is called to order. The public hearing this evening will be conducted as follows. Staff will present the staff report, questions, if any, by the hearing body for staff. We will then open the public hearing for testimony, and time will be limited as follows. The applicant has 30 minutes, which has to be split between presentation and rebuttal. Persons in favor of the application have 4 minutes each. Persons opposed to the application have 4 minutes each. The rebuttal from the applicant is the remainder of the 30 minutes. We will then close the public hearing. No other comments will be heard from the public or the applicant. There'll be final comments by staff, and then questions of staff, if any, by the commission. We'll then have discussion by the commission. A decision may be made by the Planning Commission at the close of the hearing, or the matter may be continued to a time and date certain. If the matter is continued to a date certain, this will be the only notice of that date you receive. If you wish to speak, please fill out one of the blue testimony forms and submit it to the Planning Commission Secretary. The chair will recognize people who wish to speak, and any questions should be addressed through the chair. When you come forward, please make sure the green light is on the microphone and state your name and address for the record. In reaching a decision on the application, the Commission must consider whether the application meets the relevant approval criteria in the city's land use regulations. Those criteria are identified in the staff report. There are 2 copies of the staff report available in the room this evening. The testimony and evidence must address these criteria or other criteria you believe to apply to the decision. Please note, failure to raise an issue with enough detail to enable the Commission, the applicant, and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issues precludes an appeal to the City Council or Land Use Boards of Appeal on that issue. Also, failure by the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues regarding proposed conditions of approval, again with enough detail to allow the Commission to respond to the issue, precludes an action for damages in circuit court. At this time, I would ask members of the Commission to disclose any ex parte contacts, bias, or conflicts of interest. Please indicate the nature and extent of the ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, and indicate whether you intend to participate in or abstain from the hearing.
I actually made an offer on this property, I think after it was pending. So I was going to do office development for myself there, but somebody beat me to the punch. And if anybody wants to challenge me on that, I'm happy not to hear this. It's not that important to me.
So you intend to participate?
Yeah, I intend to participate.
And this past week, I ran into Gene in Old Town, and we talked a little bit about the project. So just disclosing that, but none of that precludes from me being able to participate.
The specific nature of the conversation was related to the architectural features on the exterior of the building and Old Town parking standards.
Or lack thereof.
Or lack thereof. I would also disclose that my husband, as we were walking into Symposium for coffee, he looked at the building and said, in his opinion, it looked like, and I wrote it down because he said, it should have historically ornate architecture. And I said, okay, well, I will disclose that you commented to me in that manner, but it doesn't preclude me from participating in the meeting this evening, but I wanted to disclose his comment.
I just want to comment. Thank you, Chair Simpson, for that, and especially for the newer people. The idea of the disclosing ex parte contact doesn't necessarily mean that you can't have it. You just need to disclose the nature of it so that the applicant has the opportunity to provide additional rebuttal or response. If you have a thought or a conversation that might sway you, but you haven't given a chance to give them the opportunity to speak about it, that's when it becomes a problem. So, good job setting the example.
Oh, good. And then I'll ask my husband not to make architectural comments on, because he's not an architect. He's a guy walking down the street to have coffee.
And then Friday, there was coffee with a cop at the Starbucks, and Joe Gall, city manager, was there. I was there but in a position of being on the Sherwood Police Foundation, and we were talking about the upcoming hearing and, just details about the discussion of the location next to Symposium, but nothing that would preclude me from participating.
All right. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge any Planning Commission member's ability to participate in this hearing this evening? All right. The planning staff will now present the staff report. Ms. Joy.
Yes, good evening, Commissioners. I'm Joy Chang, Associate Planner for the City's Planning Department. Before you tonight is Pine Street Mixed Use Development, LA 18-05. The site is vacant as...
I was going to say, maybe extra microphones turned off so we don't have that squelch.
All right. The site is vacant and is in the Smockville area of the Sherwood Old Town Overlay District. An Old Town Overlay District overlay review is required along with a site plan review. Under Section 16.164010 Landmark Review, the Planning Commission shall act as a Landmark Advisory Board and the designated review and approval authority for historic and cultural landmarks, unless otherwise stated within this section. Since it is in Old Town, that is the authority. The property address is 22415 Southwest Pine Street in Sherwood Old Town and is located on the southwest corner of Southwest 2nd and Pine. The site is currently vacant with street frontages on 2nd and Pine Street, along with street frontage from an alleyway located east of the site, and the other side of the alleyway is Symposium Coffee. The property is zoned retail commercial and is located again within the Smockville area of the Sherwood Old Town overlay. Uses allowed in the retail commercial zone and the Smockville Old Town overlay are general retail, eating and drinking establishment, and multifamily housing when located on the upper floors in the rear of or clearly secondary to the commercial building. The applicant proposes a three-story mixed-use building. The first floor will contain retail and a restaurant, and the second and third floors multifamily housing. This slide identifies the applicable approval criteria for this development. They are all addressed within the written staff report, and I will highlight the ones that are in bold, specifically site planning and Old Town overlay. So the site itself is, as you can see from this slide, it shows that the entire site is being developed. It has 0 setbacks. Traffic impact analysis was not required since the development is not going to generate more than 400 average daily trips. And an alternative to site planning urban design standards, Old Town design standards may be applied to achieve the performance measure required within site planning. So the applicant has prepared a design that considers the Old Town design standards. The Old Town overlay design standards have 2 parts. They're either in Smockville or Old Town Cannery design. And then the second part is the community design standards. The map on the right outlines the entire Old Town overlay, and it shows a green line that separates Old Town, the 2 areas. The southern area is considered Old Town Cannery and the northern Smockville design area. The site is within the northern segment, therefore Smockville area design standards are applicable. I would like to highlight 2 community design elements, the off-street parking and also required coloring of exterior materials. So I'm going to go over these in the next couple of slides. The site is in, again, Smockville area of Old Town, where off-street parking, as noted before, is not required. Even though off-street parking is not required, the applicant proposes two single car garages. One will be used for parking and one for loading and trash services, as reflected on these images. Access points for these 2 areas are going to be through the alley. Old Town overlay community design standards require all exterior materials to be earth tones in color. This proposal, as shown on this slide, meets the earth tone color standard. The Old Town Smockville commercial structures design standards have 12 components. 11 of the 12 are applicable to this proposal. Number 11 in blue is not applicable because they're not proposing any type of addition to existing buildings. The next couple slides will provide more details on how the bolded standards are satisfied. Commercial Standard 1, volume and mass. The proposed building has been sited with the primary facade facing Pine Street. A secondary entrance has been located on 2nd Street to serve the residential development. The building has been located directly upon the property line with 0 setback from the public right-of-way. The building extends from side lot line to side lot line to create a solid streetscape along Pine Street and 2nd Street. Commercial Standard number 4, horizontal facade. Rhythm, the facade features a visually articulated concrete base at ground level, rising to the bottom of the still height. String course is provided between each floor with a cornice detail at the cap of the building. Commercial Standard 5, vertical facade rhythm. The proposed storefront is divided into 4 vertical bays using surface detail that divides the wall into visual panels. The proposed bays do not exceed 30 feet in width. Commercial Standard 3, height. Typically, the maximum building height may not be greater than 40 feet. A 5-foot height bonus has been added per section 16.162 90.E, Commercial Standard 9, which would increase the maximum height to 45 feet. The proposed height of the building is 42. For height comparison, Old Town Lofts, located on the southwest corner of First and Washington in Smockville area of Old Town, is 40 feet in height. The building we're currently in, Sherwood City Hall, is actually not in Smockville, but it is part of the Old Cannery area of Old Town, and is 28 feet and 8 inches in height. Commercial Standard 9, awning and marquees. So the building facade will feature fabric awnings along the storefront window bays. The awnings will blend with existing fabric awnings in Old Town at Clancy's and 501 on Cork. In addition to the awnings, the applicant has provided a space for public art highlighted in red in this image, subject to the Cultural Arts Commission and City Council approval. The proposed awning and public art provide for a 5-foot height bonus allowance, which has been incorporated into this design. Again, the applicant is not fully utilizing the entire 5 feet. The request is for 2 additional feet with a total building height of 42 feet. Required public notice were completed, and as of the start of this meeting, 1 letter of comment was received from the community. Concerns expressed related to development compatibility, size of the structure, and lack of parking. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission grant approval of Pine Street mixed-use development with conditions as identified in the staff report. And that concludes my staff report, and can answer any questions you may have.
Sorry. Does anybody have any questions of staff before we call the applicant up to provide testimony? I had one question. So the City Hall building is 30 feet, 28.8 feet, 28 feet, 8 inches. Do you know how tall the building across the street is? No. Yeah. It's a 2-story with a kind of a daylight basement and peak roof. Okay, never mind. It's a historic building. I was just trying to get scale of it's a. Well, he can. Yeah. Okay, so moving forward, I have call the applicant. I don't have any blue cards to provide names for me to mispronounce. So. Okay. All right, thank you. I am looking for the applicant to come forth, and then if you could make sure to have state your name and address for the written record.
Be happy to. All right. Do you want to switch places so you can run this? Oh, all right. All right. Starting with a dance.
Okay, that's okay.
All right. Good evening, Chair Simpson, members of the Commission. For the record, my name is Andrew Tull with 3J Consulting. My address is 5075 Southwest Griffith Drive, Suite 150 in Beaverton, Oregon, 97005. It is an absolute pleasure to be here tonight. We have got a great proposal before you. We don't get to work on buildings like this very often. Sherwood, fortunately, has a lot of area for new buildings like this to be constructed within the downtown area, and we're excited to be part of this project and bring, hopefully, not only a great project, but a project that will eventually have some great tenants into the city, and we're excited to see this move forward. I'd like to take just a moment to thank staff for their time in helping us put this application together. We are very happy with the staff report, and we've been happy to have their help throughout the process from start to finish. We'd also like to thank the Commission for your time tonight. We realize you're volunteers, even though you got a pay raise tonight. But we certainly appreciate the time and attention you give to these projects, and appreciate your contribution to the community. With that, I think we got a very comprehensive look at the applicable approval criteria, the design standards we're working within, and the overall project from staff. So I am going to take no more of your time tonight until after our architect has described his intent for the building, but I would like to take the opportunity to introduce you to our architect. We work with LRS architects quite a bit, and tonight we have Byron Balaw from LRS here to talk to you a little bit about what this building design intent was.
Okay.
So,
great. I guess I better give my name. Good evening. My name is Byron Balog from LRS Architects. My address is 12379 Southwest Canvas Back Road, which is Beaverton 97007. I prepared a statement for you tonight. It might be a little bit redundant because Joy did such a great job covering everything, but please bear with me. It's brief. Ladies and gentlemen, city staff members and members of the Planning Commission, thank you for the opportunity to present our project to you tonight. I am Byron Balog of LRS Architects, and also with me tonight is my associate and architect, Ben Reamer. Ben is who is the primary architectural designer of this project, so if there's any particular detailed questions, he can answer those. We appreciate all the time and effort that's been put into reviewing our application, and we're honored to be here tonight. When we were first asked to design a new project for downtown Sherwood at the corner of 2nd and Pine, we jumped at this unique opportunity to design a special building that would create small commercial storefronts on the street and new residential units above. We saw it as an opportunity to stimulate downtown with new business and activities. We also recognized that we had a challenge to design a building that would honor and complement the historic fabric of Smockville. So we ran downtown to do our research. We looked all around, and we looked at everything in Smockville. We looked at good examples that inspired us, such as the Rolick building at First in Washington. We identified that the corner at 2nd and Pine is an important corner in town, especially if you're coming down the road from Highway 99. So we wanted to create a corner with strong presence welcoming you to downtown. We have employed a variety of natural and subdued building materials as called for in the design guidelines. And we have developed a traditional tripartite facade, which was already explained. And we have added details to the building such as brick lintels over the windows, horizontal brick banding, corbelled brick courses near the top, and an ornamental cornice complete with dentils. While emphasizing the horizontal tripartite facade, we also included verticality, which was also a requirement, and we believe that the dividing up of the building into multiple bays is much in the same character as the original Smockville plots. The facade itself is not flat or boring. The building not only uses a variety of materials and colors, but also steps back from the street, feeling less formidable to people on the sidewalk level. I'd like to conclude it by a statement by Ben, who said that the building works to address the city's desire for a vibrant, mixed-use, multi-story downtown that promotes increased pedestrian activity and transit opportunities while maintaining the traditional character of pre-World War II Main Street design. Thank you.
with that, our presentation is more or less complete. We are, again, very thankful and honored to be here tonight. The applicant has reviewed the staff report, the conditions of approval, which have been recommended to you by staff. We are willing to accept the staff report and all of the conditions of approval as proposed by staff. We would conclude our presentation tonight by asking you if you have any questions that we can answer for you. And at the conclusion of any question and answer, we would request that you approve this project so we can move on to construction.
All right, does the commission have any questions of the applicant? Go ahead.
I have just a few questions, and I'm not sure if some of it is appropriate necessarily here or in deliberation, but at the same time, I think it would need response from you as the applicant. One thing I'm just curious about was regarding the situation regarding the trash and recycling. Is being that it's not metal container type of use, is there going to? I'm just curious how the trash is going to be brought out each week. Is there going to be management on property or?
Right. So that's a very good question. And just to comment on whether to ask questions now or wait till deliberation, we always appreciate the chance to comment prior to entering into deliberation. So if you do have questions, feel free to let us have them. We've been working with Pride Disposal, the carrier within this area, and we have an alley on the back of the building, and that alleyway is not going to be paved at this point. We've accepted a condition of approval to provide 125% payment towards the pavement of our part of that alley. And at some point, as more development happens, that alley will be paved. It'll certainly be easier to get a bigger roll cart in and out at that point. But at this point, the garbage and recycling is going to look a lot like a residential complex would. And so Pride is willing to accept that. They understand the situation, and they're willing to work with the roll carts.
Multiple carts like the rest.
We will. And one day a week they'll be out, and then they'll be back.
Out there and. Okay.
So Pride will have access to the garage that it's being contained within, and they'll just
And
access
Pride
it
has
as needed.
reviewed our proposal
Okay.
and they've commented on it.
Okay. And then the other question I had was regarding the exterior of the structure. Is there going to be, is this reflective of the ornamentation or the detail that will be contained within the brick, or is there, is it going to be more detailed than this necessarily? Some of what you were, sorry, go ahead.
We prepared a larger slide.
Okay.
Although it might be hard to see, but the slide that we're showing right now is showing the details of the brickwork above the windows. We also have a fascia band just above the awnings. So that's a recessed metal fascia. And then we have the railings, the horizontal banding, coursing at the top, and then the cornice. And the cornice actually has some dental work in it, which you guys didn't see because it didn't show up in the drawings we submitted, but it's been in the design, and we just wanted to make sure that you could see that. So if you have that printout, you can see that that's been added to the building.
Great.
Is it going to be a single colored brick like this slide shows us, or is it going to be the multicolored distressed brick that your first slide showed? This one just looks like brown brick. This one looks like the distress. I don't know what you call it. Where some of them are red, some of them are light brown, some of them are white.
And the slide with the material slide showed more of a
that's what I'm talking about.
yeah.
But this slide is all the same color, so I just want to make sure we pin it down to.
So when we go to recommend approval, are we approving based on solid brown or the?
I think you'd be using the material board for the material color. The rendering is just a rendering, and it's not a required drawing for the application.
And the last page of the plan set does contain a material board, which gives you an idea of the pattern and colors of the brick.
Okay.
So it's not a uniform color. It's got a bit of variation.
Okay.
I think the different colors.
I don't think we
breaks
have
it
the
up a little bit
materials.
than just looking at like a big brick wall.
I'm sorry, I can pass this up if you like, if it's not in your packet.
Oh, it's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's in here.
Yeah.
If you have one, yeah,
What is it?
yeah,
5.1.
yeah.
Mine ends at 4.1.
Mine too.
It's further in. Yes, it's in the middle.
I mean, I just
Oh, it's
wanna
in the middle.
make sure
Yeah.
For design review, I don't like one color that just makes it look like a
Oh, there we
prison
go.
wall.
Yeah.
If you,
Right.
For lack of a better way.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
And then I'm happy to see a closer detail of the upper cornice with the dental. Or sorry, I'm not saying that correct. With that work, because prior to that, I felt that the overall design I liked and felt was elegant and would fit well into our Old Town. But things like this for me really make it more unique to Sherwood, and I appreciate that.
So for clarification on the exterior finished materials, material board number 2 is the brick, and material number 4 is, I'm presuming, and I got so confused between north, south, east, and west, because there's an architectural north, and then we're at a 45-degree angle from north and south. So the back of the building is going to be 4, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And just, is there any opportunity to have something on the back wall?
Oftentimes buildings get a mural or something like that while they're sort of waiting for the neighbor to construct next door. I'm not sure if we're necessarily in need of a condition of approval to require that, but I think the applicant and the owner are here. They're happy to consider any number of possibilities of something that could go up there.
We just don't want the back to the neighbor just being a flat, wall that goes up in a monotone color.
Yeah.
That's my concern.
If they're willing to accept a condition that would provide them the opportunity to put a mural both in the little tiny square, you can discuss it and come back under rebuttal, because we have citizens that want to testify, because it would be under the same parameters that the Cultural Arts Commission is going to be reviewing the artistic on the front. I would presume a condition of approval that is similar in nature on the backside of the building, so we don't have a large blank gray wall would be appealing. So, in fairness, allow you an opportunity to speak with your client prior to coming back for rebuttal. Are there any other questions of the applicant before we call the other citizens to testify?
Something that you just said, Gene, I'm just curious regarding my original thought. Were there any iterations in the design that you guys have gone through that potentially contained more of this type of work that we see at the top of the structure blended into other parts of the building? I'm just curious if that was.
You mean more three-dimensional type of?
Yeah, because looking at some of the other structures around Old Town, and granted they came from a much older time. Some of them have some type of like Art Deco accents. I'm just wondering if there was any more thought of potentially further additional kind of historic ornamentation. I'm glad to see what there is there. I'm just curious if there was anything beyond that.
No plan to embellish it any more than the iteration that we submitted.
Okay.
And above the windows, those will actually be out from the wall.
Right.
About 2 inches, right, or 4
Yeah.
inches.
Yeah, the lintels.
Little eyebrows.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So they're not just flat.
Right.
They're.
That's what they're that's what we call.
That's what I call them.
That's what we call
I'm
them.
not very sophisticated. So.
I was going to say, that's what I've heard them called over the windows, because they're eyes.
Commissioner Kai, I would say that one thing that makes this building quite unique compared to a lot of the buildings that we've worked with, not only in Beaverton recently, but in downtown Portland, is this large art panel, I think, is a very unique feature and something we're happy to have incorporated into this. And it's not something you see in a lot of downtown buildings. A lot of that area is dedicated strictly to retail and commercial store frontage or advertising. And it's nice to have artwork on a building for art's sake.
Yeah.
All right. So we have citizens wishing to testify. So if there's no other questions, we'll have you come back for rebuttal. And when I saw it earlier, there was like 20 plus minutes for rebuttal. So I mean, they'll tell you officially. So. All right. Eleanor Simon.
I'm Eleanor Simon. I live at 16027 Southwest 2nd Street in Sherwood. I will be living directly across the street from this building. I went to the informational meeting a few months back, and I was very impressed with the drawings that I saw. I do think that this will fit into Old Town very well. The buildings along Railroad Street come flush out to the walkway. It really is a nicely rendered building. My primary concern, however, is a concern I have for other businesses and buildings as well, which is parking. So since I live right there, I can tell you in all truthfulness that parking is going to be an issue. It's going to impact the businesses that try to start and be successful on the main floor. And it is definitely going to impact the residents who live there and expect to be able to park near their home. I know that the developers and architects and designers have fulfilled all the city's requirements, but I would recommend to the city that there needs to be more attention paid to parking availability in our Old Town area. I don't look forward to construction of this building, but I do look forward to having it in my neighborhood.
Your comment's well taken, and this is something we've struggled in Old Town. As you know, the code doesn't allow us to impose them. But I think that's a good issue for the council to take up, especially with the old Robin Hood Theater parking lot, that perhaps the council may want to dedicate that for parking unless the council comes up with a new solution. That's nothing we can. We're just the planning commission. We don't get to do it. It's all the council.
Right.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for taking the time to come this evening. Eugene Stewart. Oh.
Yeah, Eugene Stewart, P.O. Box 534, Sherwood, Oregon. I do own part owner of the building across, lived here most of my life. It doesn't look like Old Town Sherwood to me. I'm sorry. I mean, it's.
How many brick buildings are in Old Town? Do you know?
1, 2, 3, 4, maybe. They were basically all across the street. In that block right there, there's one. Yeah, that's where they basically were. There were a lot of wood ones that burned down. And I guess part of my problem, I admit it openly, is that I'm used to, that was neighborhood there and just a lot more friendly. I think, you know, traffic is going to be a problem. Also, I'd like to remind you that that portion of Pine Street is a temporary pavement. You should know that, Mark, when you, Mayor, I think they found enough money just to blacktop it temporarily. It just seems like as we develop, we're supposed to bring our streets up to the standard. There is a standard for that portion of the street to match the rest of Pine Street. And why doesn't that have to be done? Was interesting, I came into town Monday, 10 o'clock, school opened, 2 hours late. Wasn't that fun going through? So you got about 2 hours of each day where traffic is not very pretty around here. So I think you can kid yourself that you can do this and not have any parking. Why anybody would want to build that, you know, what's your potential? If you had 8 units up above, there's like 16 cars are going to have to find a place to park. Are you going to have to start talking about offering downtown citizens parking permits certain times? I mean, you can't park in that spot unless you have a sticker in your car. We need to start thinking about that now, not when you put it together. I can also remember back when just basically Clancy's downtown, but they had a spaghetti feed, not Clancy's, but a fundraiser for, there was not a parking space to be found. I mean, all of downtown was just across the tracks, that was all filled up. So, you know, what happens when you have a big gala going on at the New Cultural Arts? These people have the restaurant, they get one setting and then they go to the Cultural Arts and nobody else comes the rest of the night or until it gets out. I think we need to be aware of those problems. I also know of a case up on Division Street in Portland where they built a bigger building than this, but they had commercial on the bottom floor, office on the second, and 2 or 3 floors of residential. The neighbors, I don't know how they did it or what, but after it was built, basically, LUBA came down with a ruling that they had to provide parking, and the developer had to go buy another half block someplace to provide parking. So, I don't know, it's just, I don't want to see it fail, or is it going to cause other things to fail in downtown? Because, you know, parking is, we had to, on ours, I mean, people don't seem to be appreciative of other people's property. We finally put up parking by permit only for our 4 spots we have off. So I think, you know, traffic needs to be looked at, especially the parking situation, whether you're going to go to parking ticket or parking passes or whatever.
Wouldn't you agree, though, that the parking is not this applicant's problem? It's all of Old Town has an issue, and until the code's reviewed and more parking is provided, that we should do it on an ad hoc basis, but the code is what the code is, right? And so parking's something the council needs to take up, and we've been fighting with parking for the last 20 years in Old Town.
Right. Can I make one comment about the parking? The history of it?
One very short comment because time's up.
Okay, I served on the Comprehensive Planning Advisory Committee when the original back in 1977. And there was at that time the block across, the block, second block down, probably basically 4 blocks, whereas as the comprehensive plan was first being developed, there was a requirement whenever you changed use of a building, you had to comply with the comprehensive plan, which at that time required off-street parking. Well, the problem is with those existing brick buildings, there was no way to provide off-street parking. So there was the exemption given for no off-street parking for that small area. Then we had the old French church that was turned into an event center, or in the process, the lady could not meet the off-street parking no matter how they tried to look at trying to find parking places. She basically went down and cried to the city council, and in their wisdom, they just took a blanket and boom, the whole downtown, no parking requirements, which is probably not a very smart thing to do.
But now we're living with it. So.
But now we're living with it, but we've been talking about this for 10 years, and we still sit here so these things could still come in. We had the church built with no parking requirements. Then they had to partner with the city for a parking lot. So is there a way that we can look at something to try to make use? Because, you got a problem, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Take it to council.
Can I say something to the audience as a whole? A lot of you are going to have issues with parking. And literally, there is nothing we can do but enforce the current existing code. Nothing. We can't impose parking on people in which the code does not allow us to impose parking. We've heard the issue on parking. So if you have an issue with parking, I strongly suggest that you take it up to the city council. They do have that lot there, but I also remind you that as we urbanize more, and I've been here for over almost 28 years, we don't have a parking problem in Sherwood. We've had 2 studies done that I know of, and just because you have to walk 2 blocks to get to where you want to be and you can't park in front doesn't mean that there's a parking problem. So council, that's a council issue. It's not really an issue for us. It's not really an application issue.
Right, we can't apply standards to an applicant that don't exist in our code. That's the civil aspect of the law. We understand. So I have no other forms for people to testify. So if there's anybody else that wants to testify this evening, please come forward now. or we're gonna. All right, we have an opportunity. We're a friendly bunch up here. If you wish to testify, it's scary to be on the other side of the podium. I understand. So, hearing none, we'll have the applicant come back for rebuttal on that.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. First, I'll say we really appreciated having folks come to our neighborhood meeting, and we also appreciated having them come here and say nice things about the building. We really put a lot of effort into trying to prepare a nice design. And we certainly agree when we do developments of this level of intensity within urban areas, parking is almost always on the table for discussion. But I'll just remind everyone that this is a 5,000 square foot lot. I mean, this is a really small lot relative to the size of the impact that is being proposed. And adding parking to this building, although we do have 2 parking bays that will take access to the alley. So it's not as if we're devoid completely of parking, but adding more parking takes away from retail, takes away from storefront, takes away from the ability to walk upstairs to get to the upper floors of the buildings. There's a lot going on in a very small space on this site. And again, we're not required to provide any parking as part of the base zone. I would say, just in rebuttal to the comments about frontage improvements, that we are accepting conditions of approval and are proposing to make frontage improvements to both streets. We're going to be improving sidewalks and repaving Pine Street out to the half street as part of this application. Sorry, yes, Second Street.
Yeah, Pine Street was not a temporary paved job when we did that. Second Street was the temporary paved job.
And you're doing,
right, City Engineer?
And they're doing a half street improvement, and they're actually bringing the sidewalks. If you look at the conditions of approval, they have to bring the sidewalks up to code standards. So they are doing public improvements as part of this
Tell us
process.
what you decided about the back. I just don't want a blank wall facing the neighbors.
I think that it's possible for the applicant to walk from this meeting and take your comments under consideration and try to come up with something that would not make that a blank wall. But I think there's a bit of hesitance to go through any sort of a process in which this building, which has been carefully crafted, carefully designed, might have to take suggestion, I guess, to come up with something that might not be fitting with the character of the overall design. I suppose if you're willing to accept a head nod that we'll work on this as we go through final design, the applicant is willing to do so. But of course, this is ultimately within your review.
Well, one of my comments would be, and staff loves it when we try and do something in the middle of the meeting and ask a question. When does a large painting on the building become a sign that would require a sign application versus a suggested improvement to the building that would enable the applicant to apply an artistic mural that would be fitting to the theme of the community? Because we don't want to have you walk away and say, oh, I'm going to do a mural, and then have staff say to you, now you get to go through a sign application process versus...
No, not
so the sign application is different. I just want to make sure that we're not setting something up for failure. The large blank wall is of concern and historically artistic, appropriate.
So we've struggled. Joy and Eric
they are digging through books right now.
I just know from
it.
personal experience that we have been asked mural versus sign questions in the past, and we don't have a very good answer. I guess I would just leave it at that. I would hesitate to say you've got to have this, if personally or professionally, imposing a condition that says they must have a mural on the wall without any regulation of what that is, what it looks like. I mean, murals over time have been, if you have a pharmacy and there's a mural of someone at a soda shop, it's like, that can be perceived as a sign because it's kind of advertising the wares of what's inside that store. And
so how is the artist mural panel going to be approved that is already approved?
Well, so first of all, I don't know. I haven't even talked to them about this, but it's a very small panel on a large wall.
Well, I mean,
so
it's going to
would
have to be approved by the
We
cultural
go
arts.
through the cultural, right, but the
and then the city
size
council.
isn't of concern versus having a large blank wall where.
Right. Well, and I guess I would propose that the condition of approval enable them to have an artistic mural on the back of the building with the same review process as the mural panel that's in the front of the building if the applicant is pursuing that, so they don't go through a signed application. But it would go through
to the extent that until some neighbor redevelops next to you, because I don't want to put a condition on you and you have somebody, and we have this big mural, we force it on you, and somebody's in a little crawl space trying to get to it because the neighbor builds
So it
a
sounds
light
like
building
you're
right behind
saying
you.
what you want a condition to say is that they're allowed to have a mural and encouraged to have a mural.
They're
not.
encouraged to, but not required to. But at the time that the applicant brings it in, it would go through the
Same process.
same symbol process. It's not a sign code. It's not a fee application process. I'm just trying to.
I think we like the encouragement. I think there's a bit of fear of crafting this building that has been through a lot of design and a lot of effort, and then potentially losing control of a quarter of the building. So
that's
I
where
appreciate the way you've stated that very much.
We are encouraging the applicant to pursue a non-blank wall with a fast-track process that mirrors the existing mural process, which is Cultural Arts Commission recommendation and approved by council, which doesn't require sign code applications and fees and stuff like that. It is it's an encouragement as the process. So anyway, staff, save me before I go further. Am I out of bounds?
I was just thinking like up to 25% of the face of the back wall. So there's not some huge amount, and it expires as soon as somebody builds next door. Because I don't want them to have to continue to do something when
right.
it's covered.
So just a good faith effort while they're pursuing the cultural arts approval on the
Required.
mural panel. But we're not going to be requiring them to put anything back there in terms of, because now we're getting into, okay, size, how big does it have to be?
Right.
How small does it have to be? Does it have to be a percentage of the big blank wall?
Erica, can you help us out? No, I don't want to cut you off. I just want to see what the code would say to us.
Well, and that's my point is if the code requires it, then there should be a condition. But if it doesn't, then we're asking for a good faith effort to make it meet.
Well, we are encouraging them an opportunity because they have to do artistic on the 2 street frontage, but the back side of this building is facing the other side of our community.
Right.
And the opportunity for them to temporarily put something up that has a similar review process as that, without forcing them to go through a sign code application or pay any additional fees, if they are able to enhance this side of the property.
So a good faith effort to enhancing the wall.
An encouragement that they have the ability to do that without further encumbrances on their property.
I would actually make it a condition. Just a condition that up to, but no more than 25% of the back wall.
Tied to
needs
what
have a
standard
mural.
that isn't being met?
What?
Tied to what standard
There's no
that isn't being
standard.
met?
Right. That's why I'm saying we're
the
just.
the same standard as subject to the approval of the Cultural Arts Committee.
It's not a requirement in the
not a
code that they
requirement.
make that wall
We can
decorative.
impose that standard on them if they accept it. We can impose anything we want on them.
If they accept it, yes.
If
And even if they
accept
don't,
it.
we are not sitting as the planning commission. We are sitting as the what?
Landmarks.
Landmarks.
I think it's still a quasi-judicial hearing
is.
that you have to make findings for.
We have to make a finding for it.
The finding's easy. I do that all day long. Findings are easy for me. I find that we need something to not look so bad, and we want something to break it up. And we don't want to impose. We don't want to make this. What we don't want to do is do some sort of horrendous thing that costs a ton of money, but just some sort of mural that breaks up the monotony of a single back side of a wall. Yet, you understand what we're saying. So I don't know how you want us to write that condition.
Why don't we let the staff?
Yeah.
Erica has a comment that she's ready to give us. Maybe you have your hand on the microphone. I thought you had solved the problem. On the microphone.
So currently, there is no standard in our code that talks about breaking up that backside wall with a mural. So the applicant would need to accept your condition. Would you like me to read off or paraphrase what has been said by Chair Simpson?
I don't even know if it needs to be a mural, but just to let the experts come up with a color code that breaks up the monotony of a single color on the back wall. I don't care if it's a mural or not. They painted two different colors.
So I'm just curious, would we as a commission be satisfied if it were not just one single color block? Would we be satisfied if there were multiple colored blocks for that back?
I don't know if it's a darker color on the outside or however.
Or the nice.
No one should ever come to Mark Hall and say, design this to make it look pretty. I'm not the guy to do it, right?
Alex,
I do know, though, that citizens complain to me a lot when they see a blank wall, monocolored, that they have to stare at for the rest of their life.
Right.
But I also know this is temporary. 5 or 10 years, that back wall's going to get developed, and we won't have this.
And you won't see it, right? And
I think if you match the brick to the front, it adds that dimension and it would look nice rather than just the.
That's an extremely expensive change. What your code says about secondary elevations is that by nature, non-street or alley-facing elevations were less detailed than the primary facade. Rear and sidewall elevation accordingly should be significantly less detailed than storefronts and built of simple materials. So that's the guidance we have. I mean, that is it. That's the guidance we have to work with. But I guess from the applicant's perspective, it is a significant wall. It's a lot of control to potentially hand over and change into something that was not part of the original intent. And everything that has been presented before you today has come before you with a design intent. We've got one of the greatest architects in the region on board here. But fortunately, they're also here tonight, and they're hearing you. The applicant is hearing you. What I'd be satisfied to leave with tonight is encouragement to do something that is that is different than what we have here. And we're happy to work with staff as we go through the final design process to try to come up with something to add a little articulation or a little perceived articulation or dentation or some of these other words that the architects have brought with them tonight. And maybe it is a mural, maybe it is something, but I guess if you're planning to condition us, encourage us to consider alternatives to CMU wall.
What's CMU?
It's the concrete manufactured unit masonry.
Okay, so in using the language that used from our own code is that it's significantly less articulated, but not devoid of articulation. So our findings are that significantly reduced is not devoid, and an opportunity for the applicant to add significantly less articulation on the back wall, whether it's even just bringing the bricks out in force and creating shadows, and articulation will create
interest.
Thank you. That's the.
Or even you can do it through how you paint it. I mean, there's lots of ways just to break up the monotony. That's all we're looking for.
So the question then becomes, is the Planning Commission comfortable with the encouragement to the applicant working with staff that.
I'm not. I believe in conditions. I don't believe in anything but conditions.
Well, there'll be a condition of approval. There's a condition of approval that says the back wall will not be devoid of. It will be significantly reduced.
Okay.
So that's the condition of approval that I would recommend.
So how would we state that? Sorry.
That the condition of approval is that based on our code, secondary alley walls are significantly less ornate, and I don't have the language, but my opinion in the Planning Commission Landmarks Advisory role is significantly reduced ornamentation. This is devoid of ornamentation. So we need to have a condition of approval that significantly less than what's on the other two sides, but not devoid.
Why don't we just impose a condition that goes along with that, and we got to give the staff enough direction that they can. I don't know how the staff would approve something.
So I have a recommendation
Okay.
too, actually, just based on the conversation. And sorry if
And we haven't closed the public testimony, so we're able, just for audience members, so we are able to continue to.
So one would be based on this very recent conversation, a condition that, like, prior to final site plan approval, submit a revised elevation that demonstrates the back wall shall not be devoid of ornamentation. That will be completely subject to, like you said, it might be very minimal, but I think, but something.
Mm-hmm.
And then another condition, which I was drafting before you guys had this conversation, and this would be probably under like general conditions, saying something, and it's not well worded, but it's the gist. The applicant is encouraged to and may install a mural on the back-facing wall or south, whatever direction we call it, that is approved in the same manner as the public art is reviewed. In the same manner the public art is reviewed. Said mural is not considered a sign for size purposes. And then you have it in the decision. Do you think that's okay?
I think that's acceptable, but then once again, since additional standard is not required per our code,
Right. But the one standard is required, that it not be
devoid of. Right.
I would like to add that this wall is a 4-hour firewall that sits on a property line, so it's a party wall, and it is the construction of this wall is controlled by the Oregon State Structural Specialty Code. So we can't do things like slide bricks in and out and things like, because it's a very prescribed 4-hour firewall. So we have to be careful. It's dictated by the fire code.
That's why I suggested maybe a two-tone paint color, maybe all that we can really expect out.
And I'd also suggest that any encouragement that the word temporary be entered into the record, because I've known previous instances where art has been adopted by downtowns and 10 years later they won't let you take it off.
No, the temporary would be until the back neighbor develops their property.
Okay.
You know, as soon as that happens, because it's a party wall essentially.
Okay, so
I'll offer that as I was listening to Julia's proposed conditions, I might just want to hear them one more time, but both of those sounded acceptable to me.
As long as we all agree that the articulation can occur by a two-tone paint color, because they can't. It is a party wall, and so if you come out, you're actually intruding on somebody else's property line.
No, it would have to be through paint. It would have to be through shadow effect.
yeah, I'm.
Sir, do you want me to read that again?
Paint or material.
Yeah, can you?
So
please?
basically, the first one would be pretty simple, and I think that unless Joy or Erica think otherwise, I think that the meeting record provides sufficient direction to staff to know whether or not it's meeting it or not. But it would be prior to final site plan approval and building permit submittal, so B5, I guess. Prior to final site plan, submit revised elevation drawings that demonstrate the back wall,
The
south wall
elevation.
shall not be devoid of ornamentation.
Okay.
And then the second one would be, what? Oh.
I'm a little nervous about it, which may be two-tone paint. I think an example would be good, because we don't want somebody to interpret it. They have to put some dental type of work on there. They have to do this other stuff. You know what I mean? Because you can't really mess with a 4-hour wall that's on the property line.
Differentiation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the second one is A10. And this one is more poorly worded. The applicant is encouraged to and may install a temporary mural on the south-facing wall that is approved in the same manner the public art is. Said mural is not considered a sign for size purposes.
And that just leaves it up to their discretion.
Can you say that again?
The whole thing?
No, just the last one.
Said mural is not considered a sign for size purposes.
No, the sentence. I'm sorry. Just the
The
whole
second
thing.
condition.
The second condition. There was something that I heard.
Yeah, the applicant is encouraged to and may install a temporary mural on the south-facing wall that is approved in the same manner the public art is reviewed. I think I missed that. Period. Said mural is not considered a sign for size purposes.
Okay.
But my question though with that is if it's a suggestion, but it's a condition, and so how are we proving that the condition is being met through that wording?
The condition is really in B, in the first
Right,
one.
correct.
This is you have to do something. And really what we're doing here is making it clear and possible that a mural is not a sign and that they would go through the art review. They can't just put up any mural. It has
It's
to
not
be
a
a mural.
condition.
Right, I don't want it to, yeah, but that's my point. I personally don't feel that a mural should be a condition on that back wall.
And basically it's just,
It's just, yeah.
If they want to do it, they don't have to pay the sign fee to do it.
And it's a vehicle, and so the
Which is
language,
fine.
yeah, the language that I was having a problem with is the part about the approval process the same as the artist. Say that
public
again.
art. Well, and
Well,
that-
it's
Whatever the language is about the thing on the front.
right
Artist
because
mural
the required artist mural panel, because it's not because the art in our community is not a condition of approval. It is in this application in order for them to get the bonus on the height. And the existing required artist mural panel. We're going to use the same methodology. So
Now, I don't know what we're calling this. It's not a condition.
it's a general.
It's a general condition of encouragement.
And so are we considering both of what you,
Yes.
it would be both.
it would be both?
B5 and A10.
One would be a condition, one would not.
So
Right, by definition, it shouldn't be.
And really, if you think about the general conditions, you've got to pay your fees. You've got to keep the property up. You know, so it's general. It's ongoing. It sort of lives with that site, and that gives them the option and the opportunity to go through that process. But B5 essentially says you've got to do something to make it not look like a blank wall.
Right, and one of A7 is solid waste and recycling receptacles. I mean, that is potentially going to change when that becomes paved, and we don't, that would be up to waste management. So in the A section, it's general conditions, but they're not conditions of the same thing as you have to build a sidewalk.
So Julia, in the first one that you created,
B5.
B5, I believe the last word that we were having issue with, what did you think of? Or
Well, right. Yeah. It kind of morphed into, so it said prior to final site plan approval, the south wall, I've got words in there that I didn't actually write down, but I was reading. Prior to final site plan approval, the basic elevation shall be revised to demonstrate that the south wall shall not be devoid of ornamentation, which may include differentiation.
so a better word than ornamentation or differentiation, I would suggest variation.
Variation, right? That's
Because that could refer to paint, that can refer to material.
Visual variation.
Yeah.
Visual variant.
That gives them a whole range of very expensive to not very expensive resolution.
So then, rereading that, it would just say, prior to final site plan approval, the applicant shall submit revised elevations that demonstrate the south wall shall not be devoid of visual variation.
Okay, it's the applicant.
I think that's agreeable,
Understanding
and I
our
will
intent.
say that we've got a very talented group of designers involved in this. I'm sure we won't let you down.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate you allowing us to take the time to craft something, because that was, a wall of concern. Even as temporary as 5 years is, it is a large corner.
I just want to say, I really like the building. I mean,
I do too.
I really think, I hope this becomes sort of the standard as it continues to develop, to have these type of I like the cubby holes for I guess they're going to be balconies, and so it will be a 3D approach to it. I like the brick because Sherwood, a lot of people don't know this, once had one of the biggest brickyards in all of Oregon, and lots of old downtown Portland bricks were manufactured here for about
Sherwood.
5 or 6 years. So I think this is great. So thank you very much for
Yeah.
your work.
Very much appreciate the extra effort that the architect put into making it fit within our community. And I know that when it's built, it's going to look larger than the rest of the community, but the vision that's in place for Old Town is a vibrant, bustling community that has a lot more architectural interest and redevelopment that will occur. And if the parking is then resolved with council, not here, then life will move forward more easily with the next applicant, unfortunately.
So do we need a motion?
We have not closed the public hearing yet, so we have, does the applicant accept our conditions so that I can
As
close?
proposed,
As proposed.
and we're happy to move forward. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we will close the public hearing part of that and ask for staff rebuttal or comments. Because it says final comments by staff. You have 15 minutes.
We have none.
You know what, we should strike that.
Please,
And here's
get rid of it.
why I have a problem with staff making comments after the community can't comment anymore. And then all of a sudden, something new comes out, and the community doesn't get a comment on staff's final comments.
So-
It should be, we should be the last voice of
So
the
then,
community,
then
in my opinion.
questions of staff, if any, by the commission.
Right, then we can have.
Do you have any questions?
I don't.
All right, then discussion and a motion.
I think we had a lot of discussion already.
We had a lot of
I
discussion.
would move to adopt the conditions as amended, A5 and B5, is that right?
A10 and B5.
B5 for LA 1805 Pine Street.
All right.
With the conditions.
So are you making a motion to amend the conditions?
To include A10 and B5.
All right, there's been a motion to add the conditions as drafted by Julia Hyduke.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to add A10 and B5, already stated by Julia several times. Any comments? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passed. We will add those conditions. All right. Commissioner Holm, do you have the official?
So I'm just going to use this first one then.
Yeah.
Seems appropriate.
Sure.
Okay. So
That is, I
let me
believe.
get the name so I don't mess this up. Okay. I move the Sherwood Planning Commission approve the application for Pine Street Mixed Use, project number LA 18-05, based on the applicant testimony, public testimony received, and the analysis, findings, and conditions as amended in the staff report.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we approve LA 18-05 Pine Street Mixed Use. All right, any further questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I'm sorry, who seconded that?
I did.
Justin.
Justin. Oh.
And Commissioner Cuddle's cough.
It was very quiet.
All right, and motion passes. Thank you very much, and thank you again, applicant, for the time and for the community to come out and testify to. It was nice to have interaction and community involvement at this. So, thank you. All right. My next agenda item are Planning Commissioner announcements. Are there any other announcements from the Planning Commission? Our next meeting is March 12th, and it's a work session at 6:30.
Before you, I'm sorry, this could have been under staff announcements, but I didn't think about it until it was too late. But I just wanted to make the commission aware and the public aware. I know the council is aware that there's a lot of bills going on in the legislature right now that have the potential of really affecting land use in many, many ways. So I just want to encourage you to pay attention, and if you have thoughts on them, to write your...
How bad they are.
Yeah.
However
How quickly
you see
they're
fit.
moving through.
I'm just encouraging everybody
Large
to
government
maybe pay a little bit
overreach.
more attention this cycle than they have in the past. We're certainly